Everybody, it's Dan here from Relevance AI. I come to you from the noisy streets of Bangkok, Thailand. We're here to meet some other AI startups in the Asia Pacific region, a region we care a lot about as an Australian startup, but that's not why I'm talking to you right now. Let's dive into our latest tutorial for how to build an agent on the Relevance platform.
So what are we building in today's tutorial? Well, at a high level, we're building an AI agent that can handle answering customer queries in a customer support style use case. But let's dive a little deeper. When we build these complex agent systems, we usually start by charting out the process that we want the agent to follow. Here we're using a tool that's really good for that, Miro. If we dive into this little card here where we've described the agent we want to build, so let's imagine we're a software company and we have a health tracking app and we receive questions from our customers and users via our Gmail. Now, we've given our agent a list of frequently asked questions in its knowledge. And of course, we want the agent to answer any questions that come in that it can answer based on its knowledge. However, if the agent can't answer the question, we don't want it to make an answer up or hallucinate. We want it to escalate. We want it to bring in a human into the loop to help it answer the question. And then of course, we wanted to add that answer back into its knowledge. So next time it gets a question like this, it knows how to answer it. So if we break that down even further, of course, this flow starts with a customer contacting us via Gmail. This triggers a task in Relevance AI that's given to the agent. The agent kickstarts into action and it wants to identify, is the message that it's received from the customer a question? Or does it not have a clear question? If it doesn't have a clear question, we want to send some clarifying questions back to the customer to try and understand what they're looking for. Otherwise, we follow this little flow here where we check the knowledge table that we've provided it to see if there's a suitable question answer already there. If there is, then we can reply to the customer, obviously. But if there isn't, we want to notify a human. We can escalate to Slack. The human can then come in and answer the question. We will take that answer and we'll add it back to the knowledge table. So again, in the future, the agent doesn't have to ask us again, and then we'll send the answer to the customer. Once an answer is sent to the customer, we want it to consider, is this conversation over? Has the customer replied with something like thanks, in which case we'd consider this in an end state, or did they just not reply at all? In either of those situations, we want to schedule a feedback form to send to them in a few days. Now, of course, they might have another question, in which case we'd start this loop again. So this is the high level of how our agent should work. But before we dive into how to build that in the Relevance AI platform, I just want to cover some of the key concepts that we're going to look at in this tutorial. So there's quite a few actually. Firstly, how do you give your agent access to knowledge? And then of course, how can the agent update that knowledge? How do you trigger an agent from an email? And then how do you use tools to send emails back? We'll look at some prompting techniques for prompting your agents in Relevance AI. And finally, we'll teach you how to keep the human in the loop, how to escalate to a human and get an answer from them. So let's dive into it. So here we have our customer query handler agent. You'll see straight away in the agent profile page a key thing called triggers. So here we've connected our Help Vitality app at gmail.com email account. This is where we receive the customer support questions. And because it's connected as a trigger, when an email comes into that account, our agent will start working. It will receive it as a task and it will do what we tell it to do. Now, what do we tell it to do? Well, that's in two places. Core instructions and the flow builder. These are both places where you can prompt, you can give it detailed guidelines and processes about how it should behave, like here in core instructions. We strongly believe in formatting your prompts in a very readable, structured way for two key reasons. Firstly, it will help you maintain and understand the prompts that you're writing, which I think, to be honest, is very important for creating effective prompts. You need to be able to maintain them. But secondly, agents, we find, tend to perform a lot better when their prompts come in this structured manner. The large language models powering them are trained on this sort of structured text. We find that this is more effective. Now, look, that might vary based on models. Definitely do your own experimentation there. But this is how we like to structure our prompts. You can see that we've given it a role, a task, and we've given a standard operating procedure where we've detailed how it should run. But you'll also notice we do a very similar thing in the flow builder. Now, this is because you can use both of these tools in tandem to really hammer home what the agent should be doing. You can use one or the other if you prefer, or you can use a combination. It depends on your experimentation and the prompt engineering work that you're doing with your agent. Now, the flow builder tends to be way more effective when you have these conditional branching trees. Now, you'll see here, this actually quite strongly reflects what we saw in the mirror. So it starts with receiving a message from the customer via Gmail, and then we have these two conditionals. Is the message a question, or does it have no clear question? So like in Miro, you'll see that if it has no clear question, we come down here to the use send clarifying message to customer tool. So this brings us to our tools. Over here are the actions that we can provide our agent, and you can build these actions in our tool builder. So the one that we just saw was send clarifying message to customer. Now this is one of 4 different tools that we've given this agent that essentially do a very similar thing, which is send an email to the customer. This one sends a clarifying message to the customer. Let's have a look at what that looks like. You'll see that it has 3 user inputs that the agent provides it. A name, and this is the name of the customer we're sending an email to, the Gmail thread ID, and then the email address to send it to. If we go into the build tab, we can dive a bit deeper. So you'll see that this tool really wraps a send Gmail email step. So we can see the Gmail account that we're sending the email from. So this is our customer support email, Help Vitality app. The email address that we want to send this to, so the customer's email. So this is the to email user input that we see up here in our user inputs. So we've called that email address to send to. We're not CCing anyone. We're not BCCing anyone. We've put in an email subject here. You can let the agent decide on that if you want. If you wanted to let the agent decide, you would put that up here, make a new input called subject, and then fill in this with the subject input, just like that. And then we have this predefined email template. Thanks for getting in touch. I'd love to help out, but I need a bit more info to get started. Best wishes, Angie Wright, which is what we're calling this agent, at least from a customer facing point of view. So a key thing that you'll note here is that we have this Gmail thread ID user input, which I haven't mentioned yet. That's because this is actually an advanced setting in our send Gmail email tool. If you click on this cog here, you open the advanced settings, and you'll see we've passed that user input into the Gmail thread ID setting. This is how you reply to an email in the same message chain. If you don't add this thread ID, then it will just send a new email to the customer that will come through not as a reply to the previous conversation. So we need to pass this thread ID around our task. So when our agent receives a trigger, it will have the thread ID, and it will be able to pass that into all of the send Gmail email tools so that we can maintain the conversation rather than continue to make new email threads. So that's a really important implementation detail here that's a bit advanced and might not be intuitive. So in all of these tools that we see in our agent that essentially wrap the send Gmail email step, you'll see that they all look somewhat similar, and they all receive a Gmail thread ID user input that ultimately gets passed into the advanced setting here in our send Gmail email tool step. Fantastic. So what else does our agent do? If we jump back into the flow builder, let's figure out what happens if we have received a question. Well, first, it's going to use the check for answer tool to see whether there's an answer in the knowledge table. So now's a good time to tell you what a knowledge table is. If we get out of our agent edit screen here and back into the main relevance dashboard, you can go to this knowledge page, and here you'll see your tables. Tables have columns and rows. So if we open this one up, you'll see that we have an answer and question column, and we've imported from a CSV, 10 tens and tens and tens. I think here we have 59 question and answer pairs that we've prepared for our agent. So stuff like, what is Vitality? That's the name of our healthcare app. And then the answer to that, is Vitality app compatible with wearables? Yes, it supports integration with various wearables. So this is our knowledge base that our agent can use to try and answer questions. So what we will see if we dive back into the agent and we look at its tools, we've given it a check for answer tool. This is how you give your agent access to that knowledge table that we've just set up. So if we open up this tool, you'll see that it does some interesting things. So the user input, it just receives the question. So this is the question that the customer has asked that we've received via email. And of course, the main thing we want to do in this tool is a knowledge search. So we want to search that table here, the question and answer table that I just showed you, and do a vector search and get the most relevant question and answer pairs to give back to the agent so it knows how to answer. Now that's simple, but actually you'll find you want to do a few more things to get accurate Q&A in a use case like this. The first thing is the question that the client sends usually is a bit free form. It might involve slang. It might be like a whole paragraph long. This is not what a good search query tends to look like. When you're searching Google, you don't write full sentences out. The same thing applies to searching knowledge. You generally want to convert free-form user inputs like the client's question into, as we say here, a good semantic search query for a vector database. So on a more technical note, our knowledge feature is essentially a vector database RAG pipeline. So retrieval augmented generation for those of you who are a bit more technical. So then you'll notice we actually have two more LLM steps, and we use those steps to do evaluation. Why is this important? Well, when you do a vector search, so when you search something in one of our knowledge tables, it ranks all of the results based on their similarity to the search query and then returns the top X results. So you always get the top X most relevant results to your query, but that doesn't necessarily mean they are relevant. The knowledge table might contain completely unrelated data to what their query is, and so our vector similarity algorithm tries to rank the results, but really they're still completely irrelevant. So to combat that, we can use the LLM to do some evaluation. So here we give it the results from the vector search and we give it the question, and essentially through a bit of prompt engineering, we ask it to evaluate, do these results actually have anything to do with the client's original question? Are they relevant? And actually we put it through two different layers of evaluation to just double check. One using GPT-4o Mini, and then again with GPT-4o. Again, you could use any combination. Maybe you run it through 5 checks. Maybe you only need one. Maybe you check it with a few different models. This is the sort of fine layered step-by-step evaluation that you can do with our tool builder, because we make it really easy by just allowing you to add LLM step after LLM step and chain them into each other. This is the sort of thing that you can do to really optimize Q&A in your agent system. So let's jump back to the flow. You'll see here that now, we've checked for the answer, and two things could happen. If the answer does exist, then obviously send the answer to the customer. Pretty self-explanatory. We use one of those tools I just showed you that wraps the send Gmail email step. Otherwise, if the answer does not exist, that's where things get interesting. Here, we want to escalate to a human using escalate to manager tool. Now, you might be wondering, what's the escalate to manager tool? That wasn't in our list of tools. Well, to allow your agent to escalate to a human, to basically alert the human, hey, I need help, you can go to the abilities tab in your agent and toggle on escalation. And you do that by either adding an email account to escalate to or a Slack channel to escalate to. So here we've added someone from our team in Slack, but I can also add myself here, and I'll get an email now every time that the agent wants to escalate to the manager. So once we've done something like that, we'll get access in the flow builder to this new escalate to manage a tool. Quick tip, if you're wondering how to reference tools in the Flow Builder, use the slash menu, and that's how you get a list of them. So they're all here. Now the human's been brought back into the task and asked for help. They provide an answer for the question because the answer doesn't exist in the knowledge base. So now we want the agent to add their answer back to the knowledge base so that in the future, we don't have to escalate again. We can just answer it based on knowledge. So to do that, we use the add human answer to knowledge tool. Let's see what that looks like. So it's very simple. It takes a question and an answer. So you can see those here in the user inputs. And ultimately, it inserts them into our knowledge table with the insert data to knowledge tool step. So here you can see that question answer knowledge step. Now, what are we doing here? Essentially, we've asked an LLM to take the question and answer and generate a JSON object because we have to insert a JSON object into our knowledge table. And then we've had to run the result from the LLM through a JSON.parse. And that's because LLM steps always result in text. It might be text that looks like a JSON, but if you're going to insert it into our knowledge, it has to be real JSON. So you've got a JSON.parse it. This is probably an inefficient way to do this. You could just do this with a single JavaScript code step like this by going return answer params.answer question params.question. So this is a lot more deterministic, a bit more simple. So that's a way that we could actually optimize this tool. Either way, you'll end up with a JSON that looks a bit like this that you can then insert into your knowledge table. And now it will be there for the next time you get a similar question. Back to the Flow Builder. So we've added the new answer to knowledge. Then we want to send their answer to the customer. Cool. So now what possibly happens? Well, either you receive an end state message, so something like thank you or awesome, or something that indicates that this conversation is finished, in which case we send them a message back saying thanks or something like that with this send end state message to customer tool. Again, a tool that wraps the send Gmail email step, or for example, they just never reply to us. In either case, we want to set a schedule to send them a feedback form in a few days to ask them, hey, how did I do as a customer service agent? So again, the send feedback form to customer is another tool that wraps the send Gmail email tool step. I'm getting tired of saying that. But that's not the interesting thing here. The interesting thing here is how does the agent set a schedule to do something in 3 days? Well, again, to allow it to do this, you go to our abilities and you toggle on schedule messages. And now it has the ability to think into the future, plan an action, and then act upon that plan. So you can tell it, or it can decide to do something in 4 days or 3 hours or 5 weeks. And then it will set itself up a schedule and work to that schedule. So in this case, we want it to send a feedback form in 3 days. So once it reaches that end state, it will go ahead and set that schedule. Awesome. I think we've covered everything in terms of configuring this agent. As a quick recap, we have our triggers. This is how we receive an email to start or continue the task from this external Gmail system. We have our core instructions and Flow Builder where you can get into your agent prompt engineering. We have abilities. These are things that we allow our agents to do, like escalate to humans or schedule messages. And then in this build, we have these tools. We have all of these tools here that send emails. And then we have our check for answer tool that checks our knowledge table, and our add human answer to knowledge that adds the escalated response to our knowledge table for future use. Let's have a look at this agent in action. Cool. So here's an example of the agent doing its thing. So here I've sent a question to helpvitalityapp@gmail.com. I've said, hey, can Vitality help me track how I'm taking my medication? For example, I take antihistamines daily. So I've got lots of hay fever. So I want to know, can Vitality help me there? So you'll see the agent first use the check for answer tool. So again, this looks at our knowledge table, gets relevant vector search results, and checks to see if it can answer the question. So I think it'll be interesting actually for this example, if you click this link here, we can test out this tool with the inputs from this specific agent task pre-filled. Here we have the question from the client pre-filled. Can Vitality help me track how I'm taking medication like antihistamines daily? If we click run all here, we'll get to see what every single step in this tool does. So I'll let it all run and then we'll check it out. Cool. So you see here, it rephrased this original email from me that's a bit verbose into a more simple search query. Can Vitality track daily antihistamine medication? Cool. So it's plugged that into the knowledge search. It's got a result for knowledge. It's then asked the LLM to evaluate. Did this successfully answer the question? First evaluation thinks so. Second evaluation thinks so. So it replies with yes. The Vitality app includes features to help you manage and track your medication schedule. Cool. So because it got that answer successfully, it's then gone ahead and actually replied to my email using the send answer to customer tool with those details. Fantastic. I've gone ahead and replied to the agent. I said, amazing. Can it hook up with Strava metrics too? So again, it's gone and checked for answer in our knowledge table. However, this time, the provided information does not mention any integration with Strava metrics. Therefore, it does not answer the question, can Vitality hook up with Strava metrics? I will escalate this to a human. So yeah, this time the answer to the question about Strava didn't exist in that knowledge table that we looked at before. So this check for answer tool has figured that out and decided we need to escalate. So it escalated to me. It said, Daniel, well, this is funny, I guess, because I emailed it and now it's also escalated it to me, its manager. So a bit confusing there, but the customer asked if the Vitality app can hook up with Strava metrics. So I got a Slack message about this being like, hey, come help out. So I opened up my task and I replied, yes, you can view your Strava metrics from within Vitality in our timeline feature. So the agent added that answer to the knowledge table. So now that exists in that table so that the next time anyone asks about Strava, it knows about the timeline feature and then it sent that answer back to the customer. And now to test this, I got a bit cheeky and asked the same question again. What about Strava metrics? And this time it didn't escalate. It just sent the answer to the customer because it already has that in its knowledge table. So you can see that that's working. So fantastic. Let me try replying with an end state message like thanks. Cool. So I replied thanks, and the agent detected that this is now part of what we call the end state. So it's going to wrap this up. It replies with no worries. Let me know if you have any other questions. And then it uses schedule action in 3 days. And so you can see up here, in 3 days, it's going to send a feedback form to Daniel Palmer. So very cool. It's followed all of the instructions that we've given it in the flow builder and the core instructions, and it's completed its loyal and fantastic work as our customer support agent. Thank you very much, Angie Wright.
All right, that's a wrap. Hopefully that was really useful. We dived into the nitty-gritty of building an agent on the Relevance platform. Plenty of tips in there for you. We'll be making more of these videos. I've been Dan, this is Relevance, and this is Bangkok. I'll see you next time.